My name is Millie, and I'm 30 years old. I got married 5 years ago to my husband, who is 5 years older than me. He works for a leading corporation and is calm, patient, and a very kind husband. We got pregnant with our first child in our first year of marriage, and I was at the height of my happiness. However, after I left the company when I became pregnant, my husband's gentle attitude changed drastically. "Hey, where's my food?" One day, when my morning sickness was so bad that I couldn't get up. Before I knew it, I had dozed off until late afternoon. When Stephen comes home, I tell him this, and he suddenly starts to lose his temper. "What? What were you doing at home all day? Do you think I'm stupid? Morning sickness is not a disease. You lazy thing. I'm tired after working all day. Hurry up and get food ready." And from that day on, he began to criticize the way I do the housework every day. "Can you even do something as easy as this? You really are an idiot," is what Stefan would always say. "I don't know how you survived it all the time. If you are so stupid, you really don't know anything, do you? What can you do?" If I even try to argue with him slightly, he loses his temper and curses. When I try to express my thoughts, though, he would say, "I don't care what you think, so just shut up," and scold me so I can't even say what I think anymore. I am shocked that my husband had suddenly changed. At first, I thought he just woke up on the wrong side of the bed some days, and that he would return to being a kind husband again soon once our baby is born. However, my hopes disappear when I see that even after our child is born, he never went back to being the kind husband that I knew. However, I still love my husband and could not hate him. I also didn't want to admit that my marriage was a mistake. Anyone would say that I was being harassed. It seems he showed his true colors after our marriage, but at that time, I didn't even realize it. I thought he'd had a chance because I was not good enough, and I began to fear that my husband would abandon me. 5 years pass in the state we are blessed with 3 beautiful children, but Stephen only gives me $500 a month as living expenses. We lived in company housing, so the rent is deducted from his salary, and our water and utility bills are also paid by direct debit from the bank. My husband says that 500 is more than enough, but buying milk and diapers for the children, as well as daily necessities and groceries, makes it very tight. I start using my savings from when I was single to pay for our living expenses, but these two have run out, and we are forced to live a very difficult life. When Stephen comes home from work and sees the cheap dinner I had prepared, he says, "What? This is for dinner? Can you cook something more decent? You're at home every day wasting your time. Can you even cook a proper meal?" When I tell him I didn't have enough money to buy the ingredients, he replies, "Huh? I give you living expenses every month. It's a housewife's duty to make ends meet. That's what old housewives do. You really can't do anything, can you? Stop wasting my money, you parasite." He won't stop yelling. To add, my husband has been having an affair for years. At first, he was meeting his lover in secret, but recently he no longer bothers to hide anything. Even at times like this, I'm afraid that he would leave me. I think I'm completely brainwashed by my husband. One day, I'm sensitive to Stephen's mood. In this way, watching my children grow was the only comfort that I had. However, even if I want to dress my children in cute clothes, I can't afford to buy any. Even if my mom friends invite me to lunch or tea, I cannot afford to join them. It's fine that I don't get to hang out with my friends, but I feel so bad for the children. Stephen will say that all housewives were making ends meet with $500, but my mom friends around me didn't seem to show the slightest bit of sorrow at all. They are always dressed well and lively, and their children seem to be happy too. I lose confidence in myself more and more, feeling that this is all my fault and that I'm a bad mother. One day, however, I make a bold decision. I talk to one of my mom friends who I am very close to. When she hears what I have to say, she is truly astonished and says, "None of that is your fault, Millie. Your husband is wrong. He's totally harassing you." I had never even considered Stephen's actions as harassment. "There's absolutely nothing wrong with you, Millie. You're neither stupid nor incompetent. You're a very good mother." Thanks to my friend's kind words, I'm able to gather up my courage and decide to negotiate with my husband for a raise in our living expenses. "Huh? What are you talking about? I'm giving you more than enough. When are you going to stop wasting all my money?" But the kids are getting older. There are things I have to buy them, and I need money to spend time with their friends' mothers too. "Not in a million years. You just stay at home, take care of kids, and do the housework. Don't talk big to me when you're so incapable." In my husband's yell, the children start crying. "Shut up! You keep them quiet. I want a divorce." Before I knew it, this is what I'm saying, and I am surprised at my own words. I never had such thoughts before, and it came out ever so suddenly. Stephen stops looking surprised for a moment, but immediately says, "Do you really think you're in a position to say something like that, you parasite?" "Well, okay. I'll be glad to not see your sad face anymore. But you're returning the money you've been squeezing out of me. $500 a month, so $6,000 a year, making it $30,000 in 5 years. And of course, I'm keeping the children. You get the $30,000 ready and leave on your own." With this, he leaves the house as usual. I hug my crying children, and I cry with them. The youngest one is only 11 months old. Of course, there is no way. I can afford to pay 30,000, but more than that, I need to do something about the children. I would rather die than be separated from them, but I don't have the confidence to spend any more time with a terrible husband. I'm so overwhelmed that I finally called my mom. My dad passed away when I was in college, so the house I grew up in doesn't exist anymore. My mom is now living with my brother and his wife in the house nearby, and this is a reason why I couldn't rely on her. Even when I was having a tough time, I didn't want to worry her. When I tell her what happened on the phone, she tells me off for not noticing her earlier, and I hear her crying. After that, she tells me that my brother and his wife are both worried too, and that I should come to their house as soon as possible. But before that, Mom tells me to gather evidence on Stephen's behavior, and so I start recording his actions from that day on. Receipts of him buying presents and brand products for his lover, as well as hotel receipts of them staying together, in addition to credit card statements, are all carelessly thrown in the garbage, so it is easy to gather evidence. My mom hires a lawyer who speaks to Stephen. He is saying he doesn't want to get a divorce, even if we were separate. He says he is keeping custody of the children. I feel this is going to take a long time and decide to get ready to take the children to my brother's house. However, while this is happening, we find out that Stephen has stomach cancer. As it was detected early, they said it can be cured by surgical removal. Stephen goes to stay at the hospital. Life without my husband at home is truly peaceful and refreshing, and I feel so calm all the time. Perhaps it is because I have become more cheerful, but I feel that my children also seem to be livelier than usual. Seeing my children in such a state, I become even more certain that I need to get a divorce. I have no regrets leaving my husband, who says his cancer is due to stress from my actions. I'm determined to raise my children on my own and make them happy no matter what." Then Stephen suddenly softens his attitude and says he is willing to divorce me. It seems that by finding out about the cancer and having his life in danger, and by overcoming it, he has realized that he wants to start his life all over. Now that he has been given a second chance at life, he wants to reset everything, let go of all that is unnecessary, and live life with the people who are truly precious to him. Even in a situation like this, it's all about himself. I don't mind what he says about me, but to call the children unnecessary too, I am just stunned. However, there is no reason for me to throw away this opportunity to get divorced. I swiftly get things done before Stephen changes his mind. He seemed to have no regrets letting go of the children anymore, so I asked him to sign the pledge that states he will never see them again. This is convenient for me. Though I will not be receiving child support, he is going to be paying a large amount of compensation, and I'm also requesting compensation for his lover. I'm finally able to divorce this man. Stephen is concerned about what everyone will think, so he tells his colleagues and the neighbors that the moment he got ill, I was the one who left him. I'm frustrated at how selfish he can be, but more than that, I'm just pleased that I got to leave him. I'm finally free, and my life is about to begin. Filled with a sense of happiness and freedom, I leave the house where I had lived with him for all those years. Shortly after my departure, I hear that Stephen married a lover he had been seeing for many years. It seems she works under him at the office. I rent an apartment near my brother's house and am raising the children with my mother, brother, and his wife's help. I also found a job. It has not been easy, but I am much happier than before. 6 months later, my mom tells me that she received a phone call from Stephen's dad. Something happened to Stephen. I hurriedly call his dad back and find that Stephen has gotten a divorce again. Fortunately, his cancer has not recurred and he's still alive and well. He was living a peaceful life with his new wife, but it seems that after a while, he started harassing her too. She left the house immediately and divorced him soon after. She also made a scene at the company they both still worked at and told everybody about Stephen's attitude, which led him to quit. It seems he has moved out of the company housing, is paying more compensation to his new wife, has no more money, and has returned to his parents' house. He has lost all his energy and is saying he wants to see his children and start over with me again. His dad couldn't stand seeing Stephen in his state anymore, so he decided to reach out to me. I feel so angry. I'm finally free. But Stephen appears in front of me like this, as if a ghost. He had an affair for so many years and got married after finally getting rid of me, but got divorced after 6 months. It's all his own fault. But instead of showing remorse, he wants to see his children, and he wants to start over. Who in the world does he think he is? Who's the parasite now? I'm speechless. I somehow managed to hold down my rage in anger and tell Stephen that I intend to never see him again before I hang up. However, a few days later, on my way home from work, Stephen is waiting for me at a park near my house, and I feel like my heart is about to stop. He looks pale and exhausted. At first, I couldn't tell who he was. Millie, I know now. You're the only one for me. Our children need a father, right? A lot happened, but let's start over. You must be having a tough time all on your own. You know, I can do the housework for a while. Don't be ridiculous. I can't help myself, and I interrupt him. What do you mean, so start over? It might make sense if I said that, but you have no right. I have no intention of starting anything over with you, and I'm thrilled to be away from you. I don't care what's happened to you. You say I must be having a tough time on my own? I'm so much better than when I was married to you. Stephen is startled and has his mouth hanging open. It's the first time that I'm talking back to him like this, so this response is understandable. Just leave. I don't know since when you've been here. But if you think you can waste your time like this, why don't you go job hunting or something? You're an adult. Don't get your dad to follow me, and I don't know how you found out where I live, but if you come anywhere near me again, I'm calling the police. That's all. Goodbye. I leave him standing there. I'm scared and furious at my ex-husband for suddenly appearing in front of me like this. But remembering the look on his face, I feel much better. My children and I have not seen my ex-husband since. The four of us are living peacefully and happily, and I believe there is still so much to experience in life. I'm going to stay positive and work hard until my children grow up.
Tonight, I had planned to unwind at a play, but my mother-in-law had different ideas. She arrived unexpectedly, accompanied by 9 friends, assuming they could all stay at my house while I was out. Despite my prior plans, she insisted on leaving their belongings at my place and asked if I could prepare dinner and sleeping arrangements for everyone, as if my evening was theirs to command. Caught off guard by her audacity and the necklace she wore, a piece I held dear, my frustration boiled over. I couldn't take it anymore. I'm actually about to leave for a trip, I informed her, watching her surprise unfold. That was the breaking point. After enduring her relentless demands, I finally asserted myself. Please return that necklace. It was time to establish the respect and boundaries I had long overlooked. My name is Jennifer, a 32-year-old who transitioned from an administrative role to teaching computer classes after getting married. My husband, Jordy, manages his father's company and often seems preoccupied with its challenges. Our cherished moments together, like movie dates, bring invisible relief, a sight that warms my heart. Although I've always been more of a listener than a talker, Jordy encourages me to voice my thoughts more confidently. My older brother has always been protective, which I once found stifling. Now, I see it as a form of support, much like what Jordy provides. Jordy's brother serves as vice president of their father's company, and his wife, Emma, who is about my age, is also part of our intertwined lives. Emma has always been someone I admire, ambitious, dependable, and kind-hearted. What truly stands out about her is her assertiveness and the way she confidently expresses her views, coupled with a remarkable ability to be understanding and adaptable. Witnessing her stand up to our mother-in-law was nothing short of impressive. Unfortunately, Emma and her husband live quite far away, which means I don't see her as often as I'd like, a fact I often regret. On the other hand, my mother-in-law carries herself as if she owns the company. As the president's wife, she exudes confidence, but her stubbornness and arrogance are unmistakable. She frequently pressures me, insisting, "Jennifer, you're Jordy's wife, the president. You should quit your job as a computer instructor and fully support your husband." While Jordy stands by my choices, her dissatisfaction is palpable, and I'm thankful we don't live too close to her. I've always envisioned a simple, peaceful life with Jordy, perhaps even with children in the future. However, everything changed when Jordy's father unexpectedly passed away from a heart attack. It was a shock to us all, leaving Jordy and his brother to navigate the future of the family business. During this turbulent time, Jordy decided to relocate to Philadelphia to work at the company's main office, while his brother stepped up as the new president, with Jordy becoming vice president. We found a cozy house in Philadelphia, slightly removed from the hustle and bustle, and a bit far from the nearest train station, but it promised a peaceful, sunlit life. With all the changes at work, Jordy often came home late, so I took it upon myself to ensure our home was a warm and welcoming place. I prepared healthy meals to support Jordy during these challenging times, and as the weeks turned into months, his appreciation for my efforts became increasingly evident. I'm back. I'm starving, he would announce as he entered the house, to which I would respond with a smile, thanks for working so hard, I'll make dinner. One day, he mentioned, hey Jennifer, my mom wants to visit this weekend. Is that okay? Knowing she might be feeling lonely after the loss of Jordy's father, I was more than willing to welcome her. Of course, I replied, although I was aware that we still had some tidying up to do. She'll be welcome, I assured him, and he quickly said he'd let his mom know. He then suggested inviting his brother and Emma too, to which I happily agreed. It might sound odd, but relocating here meant I could see Emma more often, which turned out to be a delightful surprise. That weekend, we gathered to catch up and reminisce about my father-in-law. It was a bittersweet occasion. While we all felt the loss deeply, I didn't want to dwell on sadness forever. My mother has picked up a new hobby, Jordy's mother shared, her effortless elegance shining through as she spoke. Today, she wore a stylish light purple scarf that added to her commanding presence, even if she seemed a bit thinner than before. Her authority was especially noticeable when she offered advice to Jordy and his brother on business matters. Since the passing of my father-in-law, I noticed that Jordy's mother became more exacting with me. Jennifer, we're running out of drinks. Could you go buy some? She directed at me. Just then, Emma offered to go instead. Oh, could you? That would be helpful, she replied to Emma, her tone noticeably softer than how she spoke to me. I suspected she was struggling with her grief, so I chose to overlook her sharp comments for the moment. After dinner, Jordy kindly drove everyone home, marking the end of the evening. However, this was just the beginning of more frequent visits from my mother-in-law, who soon began critiquing how I maintained the house, voicing complaints about Emma, and even rummaging through our fridge uninvited. Jennifer, Jordy is so busy right now. You should be careful with the meals you prepare for him. What if he gets sick too? She cautioned me one day, followed by a remark about some leftover trash. Can't you clean up properly? Her criticism seemed endless, a way to pass the time, but it was always directed at me, never at Emma, who she would quickly dismiss with claims of other engagements. It wasn't that she disliked me, perhaps it was simply easier for her to boss around someone who didn't argue back, unlike Emma, who always stood her ground. This environment made me consider getting a job just to spend less time at home. However, even after securing a position, the situation with my mother-in-law only intensified. Jennifer, we're out of teriyaki sauce, so pick some up while you're out, she commanded, even as she brought leftovers to take back with her. Her sense of entitlement often left me speechless, especially knowing she could easily afford such things herself. Then, one day, a deeply cherished necklace, a keepsake from my mother, vanished from its usual spot. My immediate suspicion fell on my mother-in-law, who was frequently at our house and seemed too familiar with where I kept my belongings. After a fruitless search, I reluctantly confronted her, only to be met with fierce anger. You probably lost it yourself. How dare you accuse me? What kind of person are you? She shouted. I tried to explain that the necklace was a special keepsake from my mother and held immense sentimental value for me, but her response only deepened the wound. I don't care. It's just a necklace. Why don't you ask Jordy to buy you a new one? She replied dismissively. Realizing she couldn't grasp the importance of the necklace, I decided to drop the subject. But then more things began to disappear, money from my wallet and various items around the house. Despite keeping a wary eye on her, I never caught her in the act. Exhausted and confused, I confided in Emma, who agreed that my mother-in-law was the likely culprit, given that no one else had such access to our home. It saddened me to think that way, but without concrete evidence, I felt powerless. Seeing how troubled I was, Emma suggested a getaway. You need a break, Jennifer. Why not join me for a short vacation? The idea of stepping away from it all was appealing. I felt drained, and the thought of a little escape was rejuvenating. So, 3 weeks later, as Jordy and his brother prepared for a business trip to meet with a company in another state. Emma and I finalized our plans. "I'm heading out, Jennifer. Just relax and enjoy your time," Emma encouraged as we got ready. "Take care," I replied, grateful for the chance to recharge and hopeful that a little distance might offer some perspective on the chaotic happenings at home. I packed early, eager for the respite that awaited. My travel bag was ready by the door, and I was just about to leave when the doorbell rang. Curious, I checked the video feed and saw my mother-in-law standing at the door, not alone, but with a group of friends in tow. "Hi Jennifer, I brought some friends. Can you let us in?" She greeted me as if it were a normal visit. Opening the door, I found her and about 9 friends, all laden with heavy bags. "We're staying over tonight. Make us feel comfortable," she announced, as if it were a done deal. "Didn't I mention? We're going to see a play nearby tonight, and since it ends late, we decided to stay here," she added casually. This was completely unexpected, especially since I was about to leave for my plans when my mother-in-law interrupted. "Oh, did I inconvenience you? Bella told me you were okay with it," she said, trying to justify her imposition. I was taken aback by her audacity. "I'm sorry, but I wasn't informed about this, and I already have plans," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. She seemed surprised but quickly retorted, "But you'll be back soon, right? We'll just drop our bags and go out for a while. Can you make dinner and set up beds for us?" Ignoring my stated plans, she acted as if everything was already settled. "I can't. I'm going on a trip with Emma." "Oh, just for Emma? You can go anytime. We've come all this way just for today." "How long are you going to make us wait?" she persisted, completely disregarding my needs. Then something caught my eye, a glint of metal around her neck. It was the necklace, a cherished memento from my mother. "Wait, that necklace you're wearing," I began, my voice trailing off in shock. To my astonishment, it was indeed the same necklace. "Bella, where did you get that necklace?" I asked, trying to keep my composure. "Why, it's just one of my collections." "Is there a problem?" she replied smugly, clearly enjoying the control she felt she had. "That can't be right. That necklace is rare, a limited edition," I countered, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. Just then, Emma arrived, puzzled as to why I hadn't met her as planned. "I was wondering why you didn't show up at our meeting place and didn't contact me." "So, this is what was happening," she said upon entering. "I'm sorry, I couldn't get in touch," I replied, the stress evident in my voice. Noticing my distress, Emma quickly picked up on the tension. "What's going on?" she asked, her eyes darting between me and the necklace. I was upset and blurted out, "The necklace she's wearing is the same one that belonged to my mother, the one that recently went missing, the one I kept in that special box." I explained, barely holding back tears. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Emma spoke up loudly enough for everyone to hear, reinforcing the significance of the necklace and its sudden mysterious appearance around my mother-in-law's neck. In a hushed voice, desperate to keep the matter from her friends, my mother-in-law whispered, "Can you both stop this? It's embarrassing. Do you want to accuse me of theft?" Her face flushed with indignation. "Yes, I find it suspicious," Emma replied firmly, not backing down. "Do you have any proof that I stole it?" my mother-in-law shot back. "It's embarrassing to have such unreasonable daughters-in-law. Please don't make a scene in front of my friends," she added, turning back to her group with a forced smile. "Well, let's go inside, everyone." She attempted to usher her friends inside when a crucial detail flashed in my mind. "Bella, can I have a look at the necklace, please?" I asked, needing to confirm my suspicion. Emma circled behind her for a closer look. "Enough of this. What's your mother's name?" my mother-in-law snapped, trying to dismiss us. It's Amanda, I replied. There it was, I spotted the engraving. The initials AR are right here, I pointed out. Upon seeing the engraving, her friends looked horrified and began distancing themselves. Stop this. I didn't come here for this. Let's go, everyone, my mother-in-law urged, her tone frantic. We're not letting you leave, Emma declared firmly, blocking her path. The friends, sensing the growing tension, muttered, "We're not involved," and quickly made their way toward the subway. There's been some mistake, my mother-in-law stammered, attempting to follow her friends. But she was stopped by an unexpected presence. What are you doing here? Weren't you supposed to be on a business trip? Geordie stood there, his arrival surprising everyone. It turned out that his supposed business trip was scheduled for the next day. He had given his mother a false date to see how she would act, a plan devised after Emma informed him about the missing items from our home. Having visited his childhood home and found similar items missing, Geordie had begun to suspect theft. But without concrete evidence, he knew any accusation could easily be denied. What are you doing here? Geordie demanded. I was just leaving, she replied, attempting to escape the situation. Give it back. That necklace isn't yours, it's a keepsake from my parents. Why do you have it, Ma? I demand an explanation. It's not what you think. I found it in my purse. Jennifer must have set me up, she claimed, trying to shift the blame to me, panic evident in her voice. Do you think such a lie would work? There's no way Jennifer would do something like that. First, give the necklace back to Jennifer, and we'll talk after that, Geordie insisted. Reluctantly, she removed the necklace and threw it on the ground, then tried to flee. Hey, wait, we called out, starting to chase her but stopping shortly after. We didn't need to chase her, the truth had already caught up with her. I was bewildered as about 15 police officers stood before my mother-in-law. The scene was surreal, and I struggled to grasp what was unfolding. Then one officer explained, we received a report from a local resident. They said someone was causing a disturbance here and was often seen entering this house when the owners were away. They asked us to come quickly. What are you talking about? I'm the mother of the son living here, my mother-in-law retorted, clearly annoyed. Wait, what do you mean she entered when we weren't home? I questioned, my curiosity piqued. I never did such a thing, I interjected, trying to clarify that her visits were always while we were present. The police then shared more. The informant saw her sneaking into your backyard, likely using a spare key to get inside. Indeed, we had a hidden spare key under a plant pot in the backyard. This revelation sent a chill down my spine and suddenly made sense of the missing items. Geordie had suspected something and planned to observe her actions today, but this turn of events was beyond his expectations. Mom, why were you coming into our house when we weren't home? Geordie demanded an answer. It's all lies. Are you going to believe some unknown person's story over me? She shot back. But you did have my precious necklace, didn't you? I pressed her further. I told you, I found it in my purse, my mother-in-law maintained her story. One officer intervened. Let's talk about this at the station. But I didn't do anything, she pleaded. Mom, stop this. I can't understand why you did this, Geordie said, his tone firm. Hearing her son's words, my mother-in-law seemed momentarily defeated and collapsed to the ground. But just when it appeared she had given up, she burst into a rage. After your father passed away, I felt so lonely. Seeing her always so cheerful, I couldn't stand it anymore. I wanted her to feel the pain I felt, she confessed, her emotions raw and turbulent. Geordie was visibly shaken by her irrational justification. Sensing the need to address the situation directly, I stepped in front of an increasingly upset Geordie. Bella, I understand where you're coming from. Perhaps I've been too dismissive of our interactions. However, stealing and causing distress is an entirely different matter. Did you intend to upset me? Is that what you aim for? I asked. Don't be ridiculous, she snapped back. Do you find joy in pushing someone to their limits with such twisted actions? Does it fill the void of your loneliness? I asked, trying to grasp the depth of her actions. Shut up. What do you know about me? She yelled, unwilling to confront the reality of what she had done. If you're feeling low, you should just tell us. We can't read minds, I attempted to calm her with reason. Don't mock me. Why would I confide in you, you useless daughter-in-law? She retorted angrily. Mom, Jennifer has a point, Jordy chimed in, trying to mediate as the tension escalated. The police, observing the situation deteriorate, intervened and suggested we relocate to the station. Are you actually going to arrest me? I can't believe this, she protested vehemently. However, due to multiple eyewitness reports of her unauthorized entry and the suspicion of theft connected to her possession of my belongings, the police decided to detain her. My mother-in-law was arrested on charges of unlawful entry and theft. Continuing to assert her innocence, she demanded legal representation and refused the meals provided during her visit. Her father expressed disappointment and encouraged her to sincerely contemplate her actions. His stern reprimand prompted her to tearfully apologize, showing a rare moment of submission to his authority, the only one she seemed unwilling to defy. He cautioned her that without genuine introspection, she shouldn't expect a welcoming return home. Reluctantly, she appeared to acknowledge the gravity of her situation. Perhaps the loss of her husband had left my mother-in-law adrift, with her flashy attire and jewelry serving as armor against her insecurities. I pondered whether her desperate treatment of me and my sister-in-law was merely a facade to mask her vulnerabilities. Nonetheless, her unchecked desires and poor impulse control were distinct issues, and it was evident that her flawed judgments had led to this unfortunate situation. I was stunned by how quickly things had escalated, especially after discovering that my mother-in-law had been using the spare key to enter our home surreptitiously. The thought of someone intruding into our personal space uninvited was deeply unsettling. Thankfully, our vigilant neighbors across the street, particularly the wife who worked from home, noticed her suspicious behavior and reported it. I am immensely grateful for their brave intervention, which has since allowed us to live more peacefully and ensured our safety. We updated our home security by changing all the locks and stopped placing a spare key outside. Jordy decided it was best to sever ties with his mother, insisting that she refrain from contacting us in the future. He even warned that legal measures would be taken if she attempted to reach out. After her release, she returned to her childhood home in the countryside and surprisingly adopted a simpler way of life, a stark contrast to her previously extravagant lifestyle. Under the watchful eye of her father, she began to contribute to household chores. I genuinely hope this change allows her to contemplate her past actions. In the meantime, my father moved in with us, primarily to safeguard against any unexpected visits from my mother-in-law. His presence not only serves as a security measure but also brings comfort during this exciting time, as I am expecting our first child. The prospect of becoming grandparents has brought a new level of joy and support from Jordy, enhancing the warmth and resolve in our household. While material things may offer momentary pleasure, it's truly the company of loved ones that enriches our lives. As we settle into our current living situation, surrounded by family, we are dedicated to maintaining the tranquility and joy in our daily lives, cherishing the serene and supportive environment we've cultivated.
At my company's anniversary party, I unexpectedly ran into my classmate Sarah. But Sarah just mocked me for being a factory worker. Don't come near us if you see us, okay? My husband is a Harvard-educated director, way above someone lowly and incompetent like you, her words seemingly enjoying the harassment. It brought back painful memories of middle school. Back then, Sarah used to bully me for being poor. Finally, I felt as if the last straw of my patience had snapped inside me. "Well, your husband will be unemployed from tomorrow," I said. Sarah was shocked by my unexpected words, but soon laughed it off as a joke. However, she and her husband would soon understand the true meaning of my words. "My name is David Young. I'm turning 42 this year. I met my wife Annie at work, and we got married. It's our 15th wedding anniversary this year, and I've never really had a serious argument with a kind and family-oriented Annie. I'm always grateful to Annie, who always supports me, and we live a peaceful life together." One day, my company decided to hold an anniversary party. It's the 50th anniversary this year, so it was going to be a big event, and I was looking forward to it. On the day of the anniversary, I wore a suit and tie picked out by Annie and got ready to leave. Annie had her hair done beautifully in the morning and was wearing a light-coloured dress. "How do I look, David?" "You look incredibly beautiful," I replied. Her elegant beauty was mesmerising. Perhaps partly due to my bias, with Annie by my side, I headed to the venue. The venue we rented was quite large, and as we got closer, we saw more people heading to the same place. "It's typical for a big corporation's anniversary party to have so many invitees," I remarked. While exchanging words with Annie, we entered the venue and waited for the event to start. Inside, many people had already gathered, exchanging greetings and introducing themselves. Company events are, in a way, a chance for self-promotion, so the more capable employees are eager to network. While I was greeting attendees, I was suddenly approached. "Is that you, David?" It was Sarah, right there in front of me. Sarah, the beauty and centre of attention in our class since childhood, still maintained her beauty even after about 30 years since middle school. But now her beauty faded as she glared at me with her eyes narrowed. "It's been a while, hasn't it, David? What are you doing now? Everyone's worried about you since you never show up to reunions." Sarah spoke to me with a mocking tone. To be frank, back in middle school, I wasn't exactly a standout in my class. Sarah, seemingly oblivious to this, kept talking with a hype-his cheerful laugh. "Even though I hadn't asked, I got married 5 years ago. My husband is an elite employee who was in charge of an overseas branch until recently, and today he's even getting recognised as an outstanding employee." "That's great, congratulations," I said, surprised that Sarah's husband worked at this company. I still offered my congratulations. Then Sarah, for some reason displeased, frowned. "There's no need for you to congratulate me. What kind of job do you have being here? Are you associated with the company?" Before I could explain, Sarah waved her hand dismissively, as if bored with the conversation. "Never mind, it's not important. You probably work in some subcontractor's factory, being a middle school graduate and all." "I do go to the factory." I started to speak again, but by that time, Sarah had already turned her back on me. "A factory worker like you should even be here." "Just stay quiet in the corner and don't embarrass yourself." Sarah walked away towards a man that must be her husband, Brandon. While I thought it was petty, I made sure to remember his name. Sarah mocked me for being a middle school graduate, but to be precise, that's not entirely true. When I was in middle school, my mom got seriously ill, and my dad lost his job due to the recession. From that day, my life changed completely. My dad, once a diligent employee, started drinking and gambling to escape from the harsh reality. Soon, we ran out of money and had to sell our house, moving into a small, old one-bedroom apartment. As a middle schooler, I grew taller, but couldn't afford new uniforms or sportswear, so I had to make do with hand-me-downs from relatives. This made me a target for ridicule. My classmates called me poor and uncool. Sarah, beautiful and bossy, was the ringleader, even instructing the entire class not to talk to me. She was the popular girl in class, and no one dared to go against her, so her bullying continued until we graduated. On graduation day, Sarah called me over and asked with a sneer, "Which high school are you going to?" It would be good if you could get a hand-me-down uniform. I was so annoyed by her persistent teasing that I retorted, I won't need a uniform for the high school I'm going to. Not going to high school, just working after middle school. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to work after graduating middle school. Hearing my response, Sarah burst into laughter. Can't believe you don't even have the money to go to high school. Well, do your best to earn, you put. A middle school graduate. I left without replying to her. What I told Sarah wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't completely false either. I attended a night high school while working during the day. My dad was still drowning in alcohol, and my mom, who was doing piecework, kept going in and out of the hospital. So I had no one to rely on. After graduating middle school, I desperately looked for a job, but there were hardly any companies willing to hire a middle school graduate. The only place that hired me was the machine manufacturing factory where I work now. I've always loved tinkering with machines, so I threw myself into this job. I worked during the day and attended high school at night. Balancing work and study was tough, but I managed, thanks to the encouragement from my older colleagues. They taught me the ropes at work and even treated me to lunch sometimes, treating me like their own son. Years went by as I worked, supported by everyone. After finally graduating high school, I planned to continue working at the factory as an employee, but my senior colleagues advised me otherwise. Now that you've graduated high school, try to study as much as you can, they suggested. I went to college. I chose a university department related to my company's business and gained strength by acquiring various certifications and researching specialized fields. After graduating from college, I returned to the company. A few years later, at 25, I encountered a turning point at work. I met Annie, who'd become my wife. Annie was kind to everyone and had a lovely smile, and I gradually developed a fondness for her. But it turned out that she was also interested in me. She asked me out on a date, and that's how our relationship began. A few years later, we happily got married and built a warm family together. Throughout such a life full of ups and downs, I had completely forgotten about being harassed in middle school. So, when Sarah approached me at the venue today, I was genuinely surprised. Seeing my distressed look, Annie looked at me worriedly. After I briefly explained the situation, she tightly grasped my hand. No matter what anyone says, I know you're a wonderful person, David. Let's stay confident and enjoy the company's anniversary party. Yeah, you're right. Encouraged by her supportive words, I squeezed her hand back. Thus, we decided to wait for the party to start. After exchanging greetings with everyone, the hustle and bustle finally settled down. Thinking of resting until the start time, I moved towards the wall with Annie. Oh, you're still here. There were Sarah and her husband, whom I had just parted ways with. I was a bit surprised to bump into them so unexpectedly, but I sincerely congratulated her husband, Brandon. Brandon, I heard you're an outstanding employee getting an award today. Congratulations. But instead of responding, Brandon just looked me over as if appraising me. Is this the factory worker classmate you were talking about, Jay? He has the audacity to attend the company's anniversary party, despite being a mere worker. Sarah returned the words with a bitter expression. Then Brandon, ignoring my presence, curiously asked Sarah, but for a factory worker, he's wearing a nice suit. I'm an elite, so I'm quite particular about suits. Even if he tries hard to wear a good suit, it's ruined because he's a lowly worker. It's truly embarrassing to have someone like him as a classmate. Frowning, Sarah spat out her words, and Brandon inquired further, embarrassing, Jay, imagine he's been a factory worker since dropping out of middle school. That's 30 years of being a mere worker. Well, wow, really. That's unbelievable. Sarah pointed and laughed at me, and Brandon leaned back, distancing himself as if amused. They both looked down on me with obvious disdain and then glanced at the person next to me. There stood Annie, watching the two of them intently. So, this bottom-of-the-barrel worker, even though he's a dropout, managed to get married. "What does your wife do?" Sarah asked me, and I answered honestly, "She works in the same field as me. We met at work." At that moment, Sarah and Brandon looked at each other and burst out laughing. A couple both sweating it out in the field, doing menial work. Perfect match for an incompetent dropout like you. They started mocking not just me, but also my wife. I couldn't understand how they could say such awful things to my wife, a stranger to them. As I stood there stunned, Sarah blurted out, "But if I were you, I'd be too miserable to even mention working in a factory." Yeah, for an elite like me, it's unimaginable to live such a lowly life. "Please stop talking like that," I retorted angrily to their cruel insults. But Sarah looked at me as if I were something dirty and turned her back, and Brandon shooed me away as if swatting a fly. "If we keep talking to you, people might think I'm a local class worker like you. Could you go somewhere else, Jay? Talking to someone lowly like you might rub off on me." I was boiling with anger at such rude behaviour, but as a grown-up, I couldn't just let my emotions take over and start yelling. So I tried hard to hold it in. However, Sarah seemed to mock my feelings and hurled more disdainful words. "From now on, if you see us, don't come close, okay? My husband is a Harvard-educated director. Way different from a lowly, incompetent person like you." Her words enjoying the harassment brought back painful middle school memories. Back then and even now, Sarah acted arrogantly, thinking she wouldn't be retaliated against. I felt like I heard the sound of my patience snapping inside. "Well, your husband will be unemployed from tomorrow." Sarah was taken aback by my unexpected words, staring with wide eyes. As I stared back expressionlessly, she laughed it off, pretending, "Ah, my husband unemployed. What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? Why would a mere factory worker like you have any power over my husband? That's because I'm the president of the company." For a moment, Sarah was dumbfounded, then suddenly burst into loud laughter. "You, the president? Don't be silly. Are you just saying that because my husband is a Harvard-educated director, and you want to one-up him? It's not a lie." Yeah, keep your fantasies to yourself, just like in middle school, I continued seriously, but Sarah clearly didn't believe a word. Then Brandon looked back and forth between me and Annie, standing by my side, and shrugged in disbelief. Married to a husband who spouts such fantasies, she must be quite the wife. Aren't you embarrassed to stand beside such a man? After spitting out those words, Brandon and Sarah hardly left together. As I watched their backs, I trembled with anger. The person who had harassed me so much in middle school was still treating me this way even now as an adult. And it wasn't just me they were mocking, it was Annie, my wife. I couldn't stay silent any longer. As I was about to step forward in anger to call them back, a gentle hand was placed on my shoulder. It was Annie. "I heard everything, but it's not good to reprimand them here." But I couldn't just back down, especially after they laughed at Annie. But as I looked at her, I was taken aback by her unexpected expression. She wore a mischievous smile. I have a good idea hearing Anne's plan. I nodded deeply, feeling a sense of relief. When the announcement for the party start was made, we moved to our assigned seats. The event began on time, and the employees started singing the company anthem. In my peripheral vision, I saw Sarah and Brandon singing along as well. After checking with the organisers, it turned out that Brandon was indeed being recognised as an outstanding employee. Along with several other distinguished employees, he was escorted to a special seat with his family. Imagining what was about to happen, I suppressed a rising chuckle. After the anthem, the entertainment part started. There were performances by a magician and comedians, summarising the company's history in a skit, filling the room with a festive atmosphere. As the entertainment ended, the host led the applause and continued with the ceremony. "Next, we'll have a speech from the President and CEO, Mr. Young," the host announced. Upon those words, I began to walk slowly. As I stood on the stage, I looked over the gathered crowd, expressing my gratitude while everyone listened intently. Only two people were the exception. Sarah and Brandon were staring at me, mouths agape in shock. Even from the stage, I could see their mouths moving. Why? Why is he speaking? It can't be true. He's the president. I haven't heard anything about this. Imagine that's what they were muttering. I continued speaking. Normally, we would now proceed to the ceremony for awarding outstanding employees. However, before that, I have an announcement to make. One of the awardees, the director who was assigned to our overseas branch, Brandon, will be dismissed from his position effective today. The room was enveloped in silence in an instant. As I tried to continue with a smile, the host approached me. What is your reasoning for this? The host asked me, appearing confused. It was then that Sarah suddenly stood up and shouted, "That's a lie, everyone. This man was just a classmate from my middle school. He's just a mere factory worker. Why is he standing there? Yeah, this must be some kind of prank. And this taste in entertainment is terrible, right, everyone?" With her shrill voice, Sarah spat out these words, and next to her, Brandon grinned smugly, looking back and forth between me and Sarah, bursting into a brazen laugh. The guests in the room started murmuring, enveloped in a tense atmosphere. I continued speaking calmly. Sarah just mentioned earlier that working in a factory is a lowly job. She also told me not to talk to her anymore, fearing that the lowness would rub off on her. So what? Sarah glared back at me, hands on her hips, still refusing to admit wrongdoing. I work for this company. I cannot continue working with someone who is ashamed of our work, I stated. But my husband is an elite director, completely different from you. Sarah retorted. But at that moment, the executive director, Ethan, rushed to the awardee's seat, his face flushed with anger, and started yelling at Brandon. "Hey, apologize to Mr. Yum right now." However, Sarah and Brandon, still half smiling, refused to believe Ethan's words. "What's wrong, Ethan? Why should we apologize to some factory worker? He's just a lowly, incompetent worker. He's just trying to scare us by lying about firing my husband," Sarah said. But Ethan shouted back, his voice trembling, "State the name of our company." "Young High-Tech Corporation," Brandon muttered. Oh, muttering this, Brandon suddenly realized, and his face turned pale. His name, David Young. Could it be? He's really our company's president. At Brandon's words, Sarah froze in shock. During this time, I had been watching them, and judging that they finally understood, I spoke again. "It seems you finally believe me, Brandon." His face ashen, Brandon was shaking all over, hardly able to stand from his chair. "In fact," I continued, "Annie is the daughter of a major manufacturer that produces some of the leading semiconductor devices in the country. The company that accepted me, a middle school grad, was one of her parents' factories." At that time, it was still a mid-sized company taking on various machinery productions, but 30 years ago, it developed its first proprietary product, a microcryptometer, and has since expanded its business with the advancement of electronic device technology. Now, alongside semiconductor manufacturing, we're collaborating with foreign companies to develop even more precise testing systems. Combining the knowledge I gained in college with a practical perspective, I actively participated in product development after graduating, resulting in several hit products. Thanks to this, I was transferred to the headquarters, promoted to Director of Electronic Hardware Development, and that's where I met Annie. Even after our marriage, Annie's family never spoke of my past, attending a night high school instead. They warmly accepted me as a diligent and enthusiastic young man, rare in this era. Wanting to repay this family and the company that raised me, I devoted myself to my work without distraction. Then, 2 years ago, when Annie's father retired, I took over as the president. Understanding the truth, Brandon looked like he was about to collapse, and Ethan addressed him even more desperately. You were overseas, so you might not have known directly, but at least check the information about the company you work for. That is, Brandon, his face still pale, tried to stammer an excuse, but Ethan, his face red with anger, kept yelling, "You're so caught up in being an elite from Harvard University that you don't even know the face of our president. I'm ashamed that I recommended someone like you as an outstanding employee." Ethan then grabbed Brandon by the scruff of his neck and dragged him in front of me. I deeply apologized for the disrespectful behavior of my subordinate. "Please forgive us. I'm so sorry for my ignorance," Ethan said, bowing his head forcefully. Brandon finally knelt down of his own accord, his face turning bright red as sweat dripped onto the floor. Annie, who had been watching this unfold, turned to me with a question. "David, what will you do now? You've revealed the truth in front of everyone." To avoid being accused of unilaterally firing an employee, yeah, well, he's fired. Someone who insults a person they've just met like that definitely doesn't fit in with our company, I said. Upon hearing my words, Ethan seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, thinking the situation was resolved. But the next voice came from Sarah, who had been dumbfoundedly watching everything. Her face flushed with anger, she lashed out at me. "I don't care if you're the president or whatever. Why do you get to act so high and mighty?" Furious and almost panting, Sarah was met with my calm response. "Before you criticized others, maybe you should worry about your own life. With your husband fired, you'll lose your income and won't be able to live luxuriously anymore," I said. Sarah, upon hearing my words, finally seemed to grasp her situation. Standing frozen, her lips quivering, Annie glanced at her and whispered, "To me, David, let's have those people leave now." "You're right. It's a special anniversary party after all. We need to make sure everyone who came enjoys it," I said. I instructed the staff to escort Brandon, who was still kneeling, and Sarah, pale-faced and rigid, out of the venue. After they left, we refreshed the atmosphere of the venue and successfully concluded the party. Brandon repeatedly tried to apologize, but I dismissed them. Having an employee who looks down on others just because of Sarah's words could eventually lead to issues at work. Brandon, who had been fired, suffered greatly since he had already purchased a luxurious home and car on loan, relying on his salary. Sarah, who always loved a lavish lifestyle and apparently never saved much, found their finances in dire straits within months. Unable to pay the enormous loans, the couple eventually had to sell their house and car and move to a shabby apartment. Brandon struggled to find a new job, losing both money and status, leading to endless quarrels in their now impoverished household. Eventually, they divorced and now live separately. Brandon, desperate for a job, finally found work as a factory worker. He spends his days standing in front of a conveyor belt, endlessly assembling machines as part of a repetitive process. Meanwhile, Sarah became a topic of discussion among her local classmates for her actions toward me. Abandoned even by her family, she now lives alone, struggling to afford meals. Her once prized beauty faded away. She's barely making ends meet by working night jobs. As for Annie and me, we continue to live happily. Our focus on developing excellent employees led to stable and growing company performance. Just as the company helped me, I now aim to fulfill the hopes of the younger generation. We've enhanced our educational programs and training systems for our employees, which has already led to the creation of an innovative new product. But it's not just a new product that was born. Annie and I also welcomed a beautiful daughter. Annie's family is overjoyed and adores her. "I'm so glad I met you. I'm truly happy," I said. "Me too," Annie replied. "When I graduated from middle school, I thought my life was over. But by never giving up on my potential and tirelessly searching for a path, I've been helped by many and now lead such a happy life. I want to continue delivering products that make the world a better place as a way to give back. With this resolve in my heart, I smiled at my precious family.
Before jetting off to Hawaii for vacation, my in-laws left me with the responsibility of caring for my sister-in-law, who is now mute and confined to bed. Just before departing, my husband, Edward, emphasized, "It's your duty to take care of her, so don't neglect your responsibilities." The moment Edward and his family left the house, my sister-in-law sat up and said, "Okay, let's get going too." I'm Mia, 29 years old. As a teenager, I dreamed of becoming a pop star, but eventually realized it was a fleeting dream. Before I knew it, I was in my late 20s. I started dating Edward, whom I had met through a friend, because my mother, with whom I live, kept asking when she was going to see her grandchild. Talking to Edward, I found out that he too had once dreamed of entering the entertainment industry when he was young. Despite our past aspirations, Edward now works at a prestigious trading company with its headquarters in downtown Manhattan. After graduating from college, I worked at a bank until I got married and quit one day. Edward and I went to his parents' house. Edward has a younger sister named Anna who caught a fever when she was a child. Her mother thought it was just a common cold, but when the fever didn't subside, they took her to a doctor and found out it was encephalitis caused by an influenza. It was already too late, and due to the prolonged high fever, Anna was left with brain damage and turned bedridden. Furthermore, the high fever left lingering effects on the part of her brain that controls speech, leaving her unable to speak. My mother-in-law was the one who took care of Anna for the most part. For some reason, Anna and I got along well, and I always looked forward to visiting Edward's family. Anna couldn't converse verbally, so she used sign language. After becoming close with Anna, I naturally picked up sign language as well. One day, I signed to Anna, "We're like best friends who've known each other forever, aren't we?" To which she replied, "Yes, we are. Let's stay close friends forever." I responded, "Of course we will." However, my mother-in-law, who is the complete opposite of Anna, was always sarcastic towards me. Edward and I live in a condo about a 30-minute drive from his parents' house, but occasionally my mother-in-law would drive over unannounced and start nitpicking on me. Edward's shoes are filthy. If a man's shoes are dirty, it reflects poorly on his work. "It's your responsibility to keep them clean," my mother-in-law would say. She always referred to Edward as Edwardy. "Make sure you always fold the laundry neatly. If you don't, Edwardy will be in a bad mood," she'd continue. The one who raised Edward this way was none other than her. No matter how late Edwardy gets home, you must never go to bed before him. Even if Edwardy says it's okay for you to go to bed first, my mother-in-law would say such old-fashioned things. Edward, while we were dating and initially after we got married, was very kind and never disagreed with me. For example, if I said I wasn't feeling well and asked him to have dinner outside, he would readily agree. If I saw a designer bag I liked, he would buy it for me the following month. However, about a year after we got married, Edward started to change, or perhaps he returned to his original self. He started coming home late from work, always reeking of alcohol. Edward's been increasingly busy on Saturdays and Sundays, always claiming that work kept him away from home. When he would occasionally visit his parents' home, he would decline my requests to join him, which was kind of odd. One day, I decided to confront him about it. "Edward, you've become so distant lately. It feels like you're a completely different person," I said. Edward glared at me for a moment, then replied, "That's not true. You're overthinking things." "I don't think I am," I retorted. "You barely talk to me anymore." "I told you, you're overthinking it." "Stop bringing this up," he said, walking away to take a shower, ending the conversation. One day, Edward surprised me by saying, "This Sunday, I'm going home." "What are you going to do?" I was taken aback as Edward had previously always refused my company on such visits. "Wait, I can come with you this time?" I asked. To which he replied, "That's why I'm asking." "Well, of course I'll come then." "I'd like to see Anna too," I added. Edward frowned a bit and said, "You and Anna seem to get along really well, huh?" "Yes, we do." "It feels like we've been best friends forever," I responded, noticing Edward's slight grimace at my words. On Sunday, I drove us to Edward's family home in Nebraska. We stopped at a bakery along the way to buy some pastries as a gift. Edward's mother always had a frown when she saw me, but she would light up upon receiving the pastries. When we arrived, his mother came to greet us as usual, but she frowned at my sight, almost as if she was not happy to see me. "Mother-in-law, please have some of these," I said, handing her the pastries. She snatched them from me and peered inside before replying, "Is it these pastries again? They're getting boring. But since you insist, I'll have them." Her face lit up like a child receiving a toy. "Is father around today?" asked Edward. Edward's father was elderly but still worked actively. "He's out at a meeting." "Why? Did you need something?" she asked. "No, not really. I just had something I wanted to talk about with him," replied Edward. I hadn't heard anything about this from Edward. "What's going on? Did you have something to tell your father?" I asked Edward. "It's none of your business," he responded. "What do you mean? We're a married couple, aren't we? Can you just stop nagging?" Edward retorted, to which his mother added, "Exactly. If Edward doesn't want to tell you something, you shouldn't be prying." I decided not to respond, knowing that arguing with her would be fruitless. Just then, Edward's sister appeared. "Oh, Edward, you're here," she said. "Sis, perfect timing." "I have something to discuss," Edward started. "What is it?" she asked. "I can take a long vacation next month. I was thinking about a family trip to Hawaii. How about you, sis?" Edward proposed. "I'll pass." "I don't have a passport," she replied. I was taken aback. Edward, who was always busy with work and rarely took time off, was suggesting a trip to Hawaii. "Edward, is everything all right with your job?" "I'm only suggesting this trip because my work's going fine." My mother-in-law seemed displeased with my interference in Edward's business. Frowning deeply, she said to me, "You shouldn't meddle with decisions Edward has made." "You're really nosy, aren't you?" "That's right. And Mia, the reason I asked you here today is because I want you to take care of Anna during the time we're on vacation," Edward said. I was momentarily taken aback, but then I realized that staying here with Anna would be much more enjoyable than going on a trip to Hawaii with my mother-in-law. "Okay, I will take care of Anna." "But if that was the case, you didn't need to bring me all the way here to tell me that, did you?" "I figured if I told you in front of my mother, you'd understand quicker," Edward replied. He must have assumed I'd resist when I found out I couldn't go to Hawaii, and if I did, he wanted my mother-in-law to forcefully convince me. It was clear to me that this was his intent. I was left feeling dumbfounded and left the room to head to Anna's room. Anna looked delighted to see me. "It's been a while. How have you been?" "I'm good. What brings you here today?" Edward asked me to come with him to our parents' house, so I did. But it's strange. Before, whenever Edward came here, he used to tell me I couldn't come along. My brother is definitely hiding something. He's always been secretive. So apparently, he's going to Hawaii next month, but I'll be staying back. "I think that's better, though," I said this with a smile. Anna also replied with a grin. "In that case, you should come over and stay here." "Sure, I'll do that." After that, Anna and I had a great time chatting. I always wondered why Anna and my mother-in-law were so different. About an hour later, Edward came to get me, and we headed home. At that time, Anna gave me a slight wink. She revealed a shocking truth and an even more shocking plan to me. A month later, on the day of the Hawaii trip, Edward and I went to his parents' house. Although I wasn't going to Hawaii, I brought my luggage to stay at my in-laws for a week with Anna. I took the luggage to Anna's room. "It's finally happening," Anna said, flashing a playful grin. When I returned to the living room, everyone going to Hawaii was already there. It seemed that Edward's father wasn't going as he wasn't present. As the departure time neared, the entire family, with Edward's voice rising above the rest, chimed in, "Taking care of Anna is your job. Don't slack off." And even my mother-in-law added, "Please get along well with Anna. It's better for you to stay here, isn't it? If anything happens to Anna, it's all your fault. We'll hold you responsible." It was absurd for someone who was about to abandon their immobile sister for a vacation in Hawaii to say these words. But I did not react at all. It didn't matter what Edward said. I wasn't in the mood to see them off, so I returned to Anna's room. It was at that very moment Anna sprang up energetically from her bed and called out to me, "Come on, let's get going." This echoed a conversation we'd had just the other day when Anna confessed, I could actually walk. And with walking came the ability to converse. "Since when?" I asked. "Since last year, I suppose. Why have you been hiding this from the rest of the family?" With that, Anna began sharing an unexpected tale. "Actually, my father and mother are both remarried. I'm my dad's child from his previous marriage, and my sister and brother are from my mom's side." I was surprised, but considering how distant and cold my mother-in-law usually was towards Anna, I couldn't help but think I thought so. "Is that so?" Anna confirmed. "Yeah, my mom despises me, and I didn't want to talk to her, so I pretended that I couldn't." "And your father?" "Dad knows everything. He's always on my side." "I see. That's why, regarding this trip to Hawaii, I'm thinking we should go too." "Huh? What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm planning to go to Hawaii on the same day with you. We'll even stay at the same resort," Anna said with a sparkle in her eye, which caught me completely off guard. "What?" "I'd be thrilled to go to Hawaii with you, Anna, but do you even have a passport?" "Of course. I secretly got my passport last month. And don't worry about the expenses. My dad is covering our plane tickets and the resort, including yours." "I see. I'm really looking forward to this." And that's how we ended up here today. When Anna and I arrived at the airport via taxi, my father-in-law was there waiting to see us off. "Mia, it's been a while. I know it must be surprising, but I hope you enjoy the trip to Hawaii." "Thank you, father-in-law. I feel guilty for all the plane tickets and resort fees you've covered." "Huh. Don't worry about it. As long as you two have fun, I'm happy. Thank you for your kindness." After that, we boarded a plane from a different airline than my husband's family. We landed in Hawaii early in the morning, took a taxi from the airport, and checked into the resort hotel. Anna and I were sharing a room. I mentioned to Anna, "Your father seems pretty well-traveled." "Yeah, he's been on several international business trips. He's even been to Hawaii a few times." "So what's the plan?" "I'm guessing my mom and everyone will dine at the restaurant here tonight. I'm thinking of surprising them." "That sounds like fun." "I'm excited. Should we get some rest to recover from getting jet-lagged?" "That sounds like a good idea." I couldn't sleep at all on the plane. After taking a shower, we climbed into bed and quickly fell asleep. We woke up around late afternoon, close to 4 o'clock. Anna was already awake, starting to wear makeup. "I'm sorry I slept too much." "No, don't worry about it. I just woke up too." We really had a good sleep, didn't we? Fully recharged and ready for our battle. Around 7 o'clock, I said to Anna, "I'll go and see the restaurant." As I was looking for Edward and his party from the shadows near the entrance of the restaurant, I found them dining joyfully in a far-off spot. I was too far away from them, so I decided to venture deeper into the restaurant. From my position, all I could see was their backs, and it was hard to identify anyone. But I spotted the back of a young woman that I didn't recognize. There wasn't any such woman when they had left Edward's parents' house. Upon seeing this, I was taken aback, nearly letting out a loud gasp, but I managed to suppress it. When I strained my ears, I could intermittently hear Edward and my mother-in-law's voices. "I'm glad it's not that woman today." "Yeah, I really drew the short straw. She's tainted my family record. If only we had an elegant daughter like her from the start. I want to divorce her and start fresh soon. Try to find a reason for the divorce and extract a hefty alimony from that woman. Even without a cause for the divorce, it's fine. I can fabricate as many as I want. She's so bad that I want to throw her in the trash. I want to see my grandchild from you and her soon." My mother-in-law was giving the woman a smile that she had never shown me before. I was driven by the urge to step forward and see the woman's face, but I held it in. I returned to my room and told Anna that it took a while. "I'm sorry. I saw something shocking. Edward brought a woman that I've never seen before." "What?" I was about to scream. Edward and my mother-in-law were continuously bad-mouthing me, and Edward even said he would find a reason for divorce. That's terrible. Edward called me a bad catch, but seeing him with another woman, I felt relieved. Now I can divorce him outright. That's a good thing. Shall we make our entrance then? Anna and I headed towards the restaurant hall. When we entered the restaurant, we requested to sit near Edward's table and were able to get a seat quite close to them. They didn't notice our arrival. As we were sitting quite close, we could hear their conversation well, which was still filled with derogatory comments about me. I was amazed and ended up giving a bitter smile at how they could badmouth me indefinitely. Seeing my face, Anna gave a nod with a smile. That was a cue for us to begin our counterattack. I stood up from my seat, stepped forward towards Edward, and shouted, "Are you all having a good time?" I'll never forget the look on Edward and my mother-in-law's faces at that moment. Their mouths agape and eyes wide open, they froze for a few seconds. After a few seconds, my mother-in-law finally spoke. "Why are you here, and how did Anna get here without a wheelchair?" At her words, Anna stood up, gave my mother-in-law a smile, and said, "I don't need a wheelchair. Thanks to you, my body and speech have returned to normal. I must have caused you quite a bit of trouble for a long time. When did you regain your ability to speak?" my mother-in-law asked. "I wonder when that was. Maybe last year." "Then why did you hide it until now?" "Because it was better if you guys continued to believe that I couldn't speak. You and Edward were speaking ill of me earlier, weren't you?" My mother-in-law's face turned pale in an instant. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Yeah, we weren't saying anything bad about you, Mia," Edward retorted. "That won't work. I recorded everything on my phone. Do you want me to play it back right now?" I countered. My mother-in-law fell silent, but Edward stood up. "Mia, you've been causing me trouble all this time, and now you're making these outrageous claims," he barked. Edward was the one making absurd claims, so I retaliated. "Once I return back home, I'll immediately contact my lawyer to initiate our divorce procedure. You can't deny the fact that you're on a vacation abroad with another woman. Plus, you described getting with me as drawing a blank lottery ticket, so I expect you to demonstrate sincerity by paying a hefty compensation for that comment," I declared. At my words, my mother-in-law seemed to acknowledge her defeat, and her attitude abruptly changed. "Mia dear, I really like you. Please try to get along with Edward." "This woman is not involved with Edward," she pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Since I am a blank lottery ticket, I cannot live with Edward. Please enjoy your time with this woman. Oh, and I might also seek compensation from her. Isn't that exciting?" I smirked. The woman in question turned pale and began to tremble upon hearing my words. Unfazed by the public gaze, Edward fell to his knees and pleaded, "Mia, I beg you, don't make this a big deal. My company has strict rules about this," he implored. "What's that?" "You don't sound sorry at all," I replied. Edward appeared taken aback, then tried again. "Mia, I beg you, forgive me. If my company finds out, I'll lose my job," he confessed. "Though your place sounds better now, I will never forgive you. You are married, and yet here you are on an overseas trip with another woman," I said firmly. Upon hearing my words, my mother-in-law also fell to her knees next to Edward, pleading, "Please forgive my son," she implored, tears streaming down her face. By this time, all the other customers were watching us, and the restaurant manager started walking towards our table. Seeing this, I got up and said, "Well, Anna and I will head back to our room. You all enjoy your Hawaiian vacation. I guess things will get a bit difficult when you get back home." Hearing this, Edward, crying, shouted at the top of his lungs, "Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any compensation." At his loud outburst, the restaurant manager frowned, instructed something to a nearby staff member, and then briskly told Edward something. It was a polite way of telling him that he was disturbing the other guests and needed to leave. However, Edward was taken aback, not understanding the manager's words. Soon, 2 buffed-up security guards arrived and hauled Edward away. Edward was sobbing and struggling, but he was no match for the 2 bulky men. My mother-in-law and the woman were dumbfounded, unable to utter a word, while Anna and I were also surprised by the turn of events. I thought Edward got what he deserved. A week later, Anna and I returned home. Edward was quickly released and seemed to have returned to his room. However, I later heard that he had been in a state of shock since returning to his room and had kept to himself until the end of the trip. The day after I returned home, I went to the law firm where my old college friend worked to request a divorce proceeding. Unfortunately, my friend was not present, but a female lawyer was assigned to me, who was very easy to talk to, and I was able to explain everything that had happened. After listening to my story, she assured me that a divorce was possible, that I could claim alimony, and that she would investigate the woman who was with Edward in Hawaii before determining whether I could claim alimony from her as well. A month later, the female lawyer contacted me and informed me that it had been proved that Edward had been dating the other woman for about 6 months. Hence, she said it was possible for me to demand alimony from this woman too. I requested the female lawyer, "Please squeeze as much alimony as you can from Edward and his woman," I said. She smiled and nodded. 2 months later, I was officially divorced, and into my bank account was deposited the alimony from the two. I mumbled as I saw the amount, and that's karma for calling me a blank lottery ticket. 3 months later, Edward and my mother-in-law suddenly visited my place. Despite it being only 3 months, they had lost a lot of weight and looked completely haggard. I asked them, "What do you want?" "I don't want to see your faces." Edward replied in a thin voice, "I'm sorry. Could you lend me some money? I've lost my job, and the woman ran away. I don't even have money for food." My mother-in-law also spoke in a whisper, "I've divorced my husband too. I don't have money. Please, I beg you." My mother-in-law was in tears. I responded, "Too bad. I have absolutely no obligation to help you. And even if I did, I would never help you guys out. Now, please leave." After they left, I sprinkled a large amount of salt at my entrance to get rid of the bad energy from my house.
The sun was just setting as I finished my work for the day. As a lawyer for a big company, my schedule was packed, and I often found myself engrossed in my work until the late hours. I grabbed my coat, turned off my office light, and headed out. Outside the tall building where I worked, Alex waited. I first met Alex at a coffee shop. I had mistakenly picked up his coffee, and we laughed it off. I remember the first thing I noticed about him was his bright blue eyes. He looked at me as if he was genuinely interested in getting to know me, not just my job title or my status. Alex was different from other men I had met. "Hey, how was your day?" Alex greeted me with his warm smile. "Exhausting as usual," I replied, brushing my hair back. "You?" He chuckled. "Same. Work, work, work. But hey, dinner at that Italian place you mentioned last time? Sounds good to me." As we walked, he started telling me about his past. "You know, Em, my previous marriage was tough. Lucy cheated on me. It broke me," Alex said, looking distant for a moment. I felt for him. "I'm so sorry, Alex. That's tough." He sighed. "Yeah, but that's in the past. My parents took her side and stopped talking to me. The only person who stuck with me was my sister Lisa." "Oh, Lisa, I haven't met her yet, have I?" "No, but you'll like her. She's great, has the same humor as me," he said with a grin. As our relationship grew, we often met for dinners, walks in the park, and movie nights. He was sincere, kind, and considerate. His story of betrayal touched my heart, and I felt protective of him. I swore to myself I'd never hurt him. Months passed, and our bond grew stronger. We decided to take the plunge and get married. Planning a wedding was challenging with my work schedule, but Alex was there every step of the way. The day of our wedding, I remember feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Alex looked dashing in his suit, waiting for me at the altar. The ceremony was beautiful. However, I couldn't help but notice the absence of Alex's family, except for a young woman with a bright smile, who Alex introduced as his sister Lisa. "Emily, meet Lisa," he said as he introduced us. She extended her hand. "Nice to meet you, Emily. Alex has told me a lot about you." I smiled. "All good things, I hope." She laughed. "Of course! Congratulations!" Despite the joy, a part of me wondered about Alex's family. Why weren't they there? Why did he only have Lisa by his side? I pushed those thoughts away, telling myself that families can be complicated. The weeks after our wedding were pure bliss. Alex and I enjoyed breakfast on the patio, dinners by the fireplace, and late-night movie marathons. The comfort and ease between us grew stronger with each passing day. But things took a turn when Alex came home from work one evening, looking quite troubled. "Emily," he began hesitantly, "there's something I need to discuss." "What's wrong?" I asked, my heart rate increasing a bit. "It's Lisa," he replied. "She's going through a rough patch. Her boyfriend has been abusive, and she needs a place to stay." I was taken aback. "Oh my goodness, that's terrible. Of course she can stay with us." "Are you sure?" Alex asked, looking relieved. "Absolutely. She's family, and we should help her out." The next day, Lisa moved into our guest room. She looked different from when I had last seen her on our wedding day. There were visible bruises on her face and arms, and she looked utterly defeated. "Hey, Lisa," I said, trying to sound upbeat. "I'm so sorry to hear about what happened. Please know you're safe here." She smiled weakly. "Thanks, Emily. It means a lot to me." As the days went by, I noticed Lisa and Alex spending a lot of time together. They'd laugh, chat, and sometimes even cook together. It was nice seeing them bond, but sometimes it felt like I was the third wheel in my own home. One evening, after dinner, I decided to bring up my concerns with Alex. "Alex," I began cautiously, "I'm glad Lisa is here and we're able to help her out, but—" "But?" he prodded gently. "I sometimes feel a bit left out," I admitted. "You both seem so close, and I just wish I could be a part of that." Alex looked thoughtful for a moment. "I understand where you're coming from, Em, but Lisa and I have shared a lot over the years. I promise, though, I'll make an effort to ensure you don't feel this way." The next day, Alex planned a movie night for the three of us. It was fun, filled with laughter, popcorn fights, and reminiscing about old times. Lisa shared stories from their childhood, and I felt more included. Yet, a small seed of doubt had been planted in my mind. I noticed the whispered conversations they'd have when they thought I wasn't around, and the way they'd sometimes go silent when I entered a room. I tried to dismiss it as sibling closeness, but something didn't sit right. One evening, I decided to approach Lisa. "Lisa, can we talk?" I asked as I approached her in the garden. She looked up, slightly startled. "Sure, what's up?" "I've noticed you and Alex have a very close bond, which is great, but sometimes it feels like you both share secrets I'm not a part of. It's probably just my imagination, but it makes me a bit uncomfortable." Lisa sighed. "Emily, I understand, but you need to know that Alex and I have been through a lot together. It's not that we're keeping secrets from you. It's just some things from the past we occasionally discuss." I nodded, not entirely convinced, but appreciating her honesty. "Thanks for understanding. I just wanted to clear the air." The following months were busy for me. My job demanded a lot, and often I would find myself buried in paperwork till the wee hours of the morning. This meant Alex and Lisa had a lot more time to spend together, which only fueled my rising unease. They seemed to share a bond I couldn't quite grasp, and the few moments I had at home were filled with hushed whispers and awkward silences. One day, during a short break at work, I confided in my colleague Sarah. "I don't know, Sarah. I just can't shake off this feeling," I said, fiddling with my coffee cup. Sarah looked concerned. "What do you mean?" "It's Lisa. She's been living with us for months now, and while I want to be supportive, something feels off." "I can't explain it," I replied, taking a sip of my drink. Sarah pondered for a moment. "Have you talked to Alex about it?" I nodded. "Yes, but he dismisses it. He says I'm reading too much into things. Maybe I am." Sarah leaned in, lowering her voice. "You know, if you really want to ease your mind, I have a friend in the police department. Maybe he could look into whether Lisa really reported any abuse." The idea was tempting. "Do you think it's a good idea? I don't want to breach her trust." Sarah shrugged. "It's just to give you peace of mind. If there's a report, then you know she's being truthful. If not, then you have every right to be concerned." I hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. "Okay, let's do it." A few days later, Sarah approached me with the information. "Emily, there's no record of Lisa reporting any abuse." My heart sank. "What? Are you sure?" Sarah nodded, looking grim. "My friend double-checked. There's nothing." Feeling like I was in some sort of bad dream, I headed home, my mind racing. I wanted to confront Lisa, but I decided to approach the situation carefully. That evening, during dinner, I casually broached the subject. "Lisa," I began cautiously, "I have a friend who works with domestic abuse victims. She said she could help if you wanted to move forward with a case, or even just counseling." Lisa looked taken aback. "Oh, that's thoughtful of you, Emily, but I'd rather not. It's a painful chapter, and I just want to move on." "But it's important to report these things," I pressed on, watching her closely, "for your safety and others." She looked flustered. "I know, but it's my choice. I don't want to drag everything back up." The conversation ended there, but my suspicions only grew stronger. Over the next few weeks, I became more observant. I noticed things: the glances they shared, the way they seemed to communicate without words, and the secretive phone calls Lisa would often take outside. One day, as I was searching for a file in our home office, I stumbled upon a photo. It was an old picture of Lisa and Alex, but they were not posed like siblings. Their closeness in the image was intimate, and the backdrop was a university banner. Confused and hurt, I decided to take a drastic step. I would pretend to go on a business trip and then observe them from a distance. I needed to know what was going on in my own home. With my plan in place, I informed Alex and Lisa about an upcoming business trip to Chicago. I could see genuine surprise in their eyes. "Another one?" Alex asked, sounding slightly joyful. "How long will you be gone?" "Just a couple of days," I replied, trying to sound casual. "It's a crucial meeting, and they need me there." Lisa chimed in. "Well, we'll miss you, but work is work. Take care, okay?" "Thanks, Lisa," I replied, hiding the storm of emotions inside me. The following day, I packed a small suitcase and drove to the airport, but instead of boarding a plane, I rented a car and checked into a nearby motel. I then spent the day shopping and planning my surprise return to the house. By nightfall, I parked the rental a block away from our home and approached on foot. The windows were illuminated, suggesting they were in the living room. Silently, I used my key and entered through the back door. I tiptoed towards the bedroom, and what I saw next left me reeling. There, in our bed, lay Alex and Lisa, wrapped in each other's arms. The betrayal stung deeply. "It's your own sister!" I screamed, unable to contain my shock and anger. Both of them jolted upright, panic evident on their faces. "Emily!" Alex exclaimed, jumping out of the bed. "This isn't what it looks like." I scoffed, tears filling my eyes. "Really? Because it looks like you're in bed with your sister." Lisa, clutching the sheets around her, tried to find her voice. "Emily, let us explain." "Explain?" I shouted. "How can you possibly explain this?" Alex took a deep breath. "Lisa is not my sister. She's someone I've known since university." My mind raced. The photo, their closeness, the secrets. It all made sense now. "So, all this time you lied to me? About everything?" I questioned, trying to grasp the magnitude of the deception. Lisa finally spoke. "We didn't plan for it to go this far, but when we met you and you were so kind and generous, we just went along with it." I looked at Alex, searching for some sign of remorse. "Why, Alex? Why did you marry me if you loved her?" He looked down, guilt evident in his eyes. "I thought I could move on from her. You were everything I ever wanted, but old feelings, they resurfaced." Fighting back tears, I said, "You both betrayed me. In my own home. I can't even look at either of you." I turned and left the room. The next morning, I sat in the office of my good friend and fellow lawyer, Jenna. She had always been a pillar of support, and I knew I could trust her with my situation. Jenna looked at me, her face a mixture of concern and anger. "Emily, this is just unbelievable. How could they do this to you?" "I was a fool," I muttered, my gaze fixed on the floor. "I believed him, trusted him." She leaned forward, taking my hands in hers. "It's not your fault. He's the one who lied." I took a deep breath. "I want to take this to court, Jenna. I need to make sure they pay for what they've done." Jenna's eyes narrowed with determination. "You have every right to. Let's go over the details, and we'll build the strongest case possible." Over the next few weeks, Jenna and I delved deep into the laws concerning fraud and deception in marriages. I was determined to ensure Alex faced the consequences of his actions. One evening, Jenna called me with some news. "Emily, I've managed to get in touch with Alex's ex-wife. She's willing to help us." A rush of relief and gratitude filled me. "Thank you, Jenna. This could be the key we need." A few days later, Alex's ex-wife, Marianne, came to meet me. She was a petite woman with a steely determination in her eyes. "Emily," she began, extending her hand, "I'm so sorry for what you're going through. Alex has a history of deceit, and I experienced it firsthand." I nodded, taking a seat across from her. "Tell me everything." She sighed. "We were in love, or so I thought. But then I found out about his affair with Lisa. When I confronted him, he painted me as the villain, told everyone I was the one cheating." Tears glistened in Marianne's eyes. I was left with nothing. I squeezed her hand gently. "Together, we can ensure he doesn't hurt anyone else." A determined look crossed Marianne's face. "I still have all the evidence, text messages, photos, everything. We can use it in court." Our strategy was becoming clearer. With Marianne's evidence and my testimony, we had a robust case against Alex. In the midst of our planning, Jenna received a surprising call. "Emily," Jenna said, her face pale, "it's Alex's parents. They want to meet you." The next day, I found myself face to face with two elderly individuals, their faces lined with age and sorrow. "Mrs. Clark," began the father, his voice quivering, "we're so sorry. We tried to warn you, but we didn't know how." The mother, tears streaming down her face, added, "We disowned Alex after what he did to Marianne, but we never imagined he'd do something like this again." Their words only fueled my determination. "We're taking this to court. He won't be able to hurt anyone else." The day of the trial had arrived. My heart raced as I entered the courthouse, Jenna by my side. The courtroom was filled to capacity, a testament to the gravity of the case and the scandal surrounding it. As I took my seat, I saw Alex and Lisa across the room. They were huddled together, whispering amongst themselves. Alex glanced in my direction, a flash of guilt crossing his eyes. Jenna leaned over and whispered, "Stay strong, Emily. We've got this." Before I could reply, the judge entered the room and everyone fell silent. The trial began with opening statements. Jenna presented our case powerfully, laying out the web of deceit spun by Alex and Lisa. Their lawyer tried to paint a picture of a simple misunderstanding, but the skepticism in the room was palpable. The real turning point came when Marianne took the stand. She spoke calmly and clearly, recounting the betrayal she'd faced at Alex's hands. "I loved him," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "but he took everything from me, my reputation, my self-worth." She then shared the evidence she had kept, text messages, photos, and even a letter from Alex confessing to his lies. Alex's lawyer attempted to discredit Marianne, implying that she was bitter and out for revenge. But her dignity and the evidence spoke for themselves. After Marianne, it was my turn. I told the court about my relationship with Alex, our whirlwind romance, and the gut-wrenching betrayal I had felt when I discovered the truth. I spoke about how I had opened up my home and my heart, only to be repaid with deceit. Lisa was called to the stand next. She seemed nervous, often stumbling over her words. When Jenna questioned her about their relationship, she admitted, "Yes, Alex and I have been in a relationship for years, but we never meant to hurt anyone." Jenna pressed on, "So why lie about being siblings? Why weave such a complicated web of deceit?" Lisa looked down, tears in her eyes. "I love him. I'd do anything for him. But I know now that what we did was wrong." Finally, it was Alex's turn to testify. He looked defeated, a stark contrast to the confident man I had once known. "Why did you do it, Alex?" Jenna asked pointedly. He sighed. "I thought I could have it all. Emily's love and support, and Lisa's companionship. I never thought it would all unravel like this." The cross-examination was intense, but Alex's admissions left little room for his defense to maneuver. The closing arguments were passionate. Jenna made a compelling case for the pain and suffering caused by Alex and Lisa's actions. Alex's lawyer tried to argue that no real harm had been done, but it was clear the jury wasn't buying it. As the trial concluded and the jury went to deliberate, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. I had done all I could. Now it was in the hands of the jury. Hours seemed like days, but finally the jury returned with their verdict. The tension in the room was palpable. The forepersons stood up. We find the defendants, Alex and Lisa, guilty of fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress. After the trial, there was a whirlwind of media attention. Reporters wanted interviews, and people I barely knew reached out with messages of support. But I was done with the spotlight. I wanted to move on. I wanted a fresh start. One evening, Jenna and I sat on my porch, sipping tea and discussing the past events. Jenna looked at me with a concerned expression. Em, I know you want to move on, but you can't just suppress all that happened. You've got to process it. I looked out into the distance. I know, Jenna, but every time I think of Alex and Lisa, I feel this burning rage. I want to forget them and everything associated with them. She sighed. It's natural to feel that way, but running away from it won't help. Maybe you should consider therapy? It could help you work through those emotions. I nodded. I've thought about it. I'll give it a try. A few days later, I met Dr. Carter, a renowned therapist. During our first session, I recounted my story, and she listened patiently. When I finished, she said, Emily, you've been through a traumatic experience. It's okay to feel angry, sad, or any other emotion, but remember, healing takes time. In the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in therapy. Slowly, I began to understand and accept my feelings. I learned that healing wasn't about forgetting, but about finding a way to live with the memories without letting them control me. One day, after a particularly intense session, Dr. Carter said, Emily, you've made significant progress, but have you thought about what's next for you? I paused. I want to rebuild my life, maybe even find love again, but the thought of trusting someone scares me. She smiled gently. It's natural to feel that way. But remember, not everyone is like Alex. When you're ready, you'll find someone who values and respects you for who you are. Months passed, and I threw myself into work, taking on challenging cases and fighting for justice. My reputation as a tenacious lawyer grew, and so did my confidence. One evening, while working late at the office, I heard a knock on my door. I looked up to find Mark, a fellow lawyer whom I'd worked with on a few cases. Hey, Emily, working late again? He asked with a warm smile. I smiled back. You know me, always chasing deadlines. Mark chuckled. Want to grab a coffee? Take a break? I hesitated for a moment, then thought, why not? Sure, let's do it. Over coffee, Mark and I chatted about everything, work, life, and even my ordeal with Alex. Mark was understanding and supportive. You're incredibly strong, Emily. Not many could come out of such a situation with so much resilience. We started spending more time together, grabbing lunches, attending events, and even going on hikes during weekends. It was refreshing to be with someone who understood me and didn't judge my past. One evening, as we sat by the beach watching the sunset, Mark turned to me. Emily, I really like spending time with you. I know you've been through a lot, and I won't rush you, but I want you to know that I care about you. I looked into his eyes, seeing sincerity and warmth. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. I'm still healing, but it feels good to have someone like you by my side. Mark smiled and took my hand. We'll take it one day at a time. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Mark and I grew closer. I realized that life had given me another chance at love, and I wasn't going to let my past hold me back.